Welcome to Friends with Deficits. I'm your host, Adam Sultan, and my next friend is Patty Evers. Patty is a therapist here in Austin, Texas. Seem to be interviewing a lot of therapists this year. Anyway, Patty has a rare blood protein deficiency that she's going to tell you all about, along with her journey through a less than pristine medical system and how it has all affected and informed her life and work. Also, a heads up, you might hear in the background the sounds of a rescue dog she recently acquired, making itself known from time to time. And without any further ado, here's Patty Evers. When did you get into therapy? When did you, as a therapist?
I have been in private practice for 12 years. When I worked at the Capitol, it was a completely different trajectory for my life. So I think that getting sick and having to reevaluate what was important kind of changed all of that. So I went back to school, got my master's degree, and then been in, kind of going this direction ever since.
That's great.
Yeah. So in early 2000s, late 90s, I worked at the Capitol. And I was walking across the street to my car, and I was just walking, and it felt like I got shot. It was, that's the best way that I can describe it. Didn't really think a whole lot of it then, kind of shook it off. And
Where do you feel like you got shot?
in the heart, it felt
Wow.
like I was shot in the chest. And for the next couple of days, it was really hard for me to breathe. And at that time, I was super young and I'll just shake it off. And really, wasn't into doctors, didn't really want to go, but I couldn't breathe. So I went in and I had thrown a blood clot to my lung, and they kept me for about a week. They thought it was maybe just kind of a one-time thing. They didn't really think that much of it. And about 6 months later, I threw another one to my leg, to my left leg.
Are blood clots not a big deal? If they didn't think anything of it?
Yeah, no, they were concerned enough to put me on blood thinners while I was in the hospital. But barring that, they're like, "You're young, you're healthy. This was probably just a thing that happened," and they just weren't concerned. So the second one is when they started looking a little bit deeper and diagnosed me with protein C deficiency, which just means that I make clots really, really easily. And I started taking blood thinners full time at that point.
Is that a common condition?
Not super common. Protein C deficiency. It's not super common. I know that there are a lot of blood clotting disorders. This is just kind of in the mix of them. And I had it. It's supposedly hereditary. Nobody in my family has a blood clotting issue. There have been a couple of people who've had blood clots following surgery, which is far more common than actually having a chronic disease that causes them. But yeah, that was the beginning. Following that, had to go on a regimen of blood thinners indefinitely. I was told that I wouldn't be able to have children, and there was no cure. So that was going to be it. I was just going to be on blood thinners forever, and that was the end of the story. I don't know if it's common to be on long-term blood thinner therapy, if it's common for it to stop working, but it did several times in my case. And every time it would stop working, I would have a clot. So it's just been, the last 20 years of in and out of the hospital, close calls, near misses, really having to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I'm bringing this thing along. I'm bringing along the fact that I have this chronic condition. Maybe the blood thinners will work. Maybe they won't. So far, they've been working. 3 years ago, I had an issue with my circulation that was horrible, and for an entire summer, I couldn't really walk. But I kept working, which was weird.
Was that related to the blood clots?
It is. There was an issue with my circulation. I had a clot, but it wasn't causing the edema that I had in both legs. That was kind of like a side chick, a side product of the fact that I had the blood clot. And I had to go to several doctors before anyone would be willing to do anything, look at me, do anything.
And when you get these blood clots, is it like getting shot every time, or how do you know you have one?
I've only had two that were pulmonary embolisms. That one and one a few years after that. Most of the rest of them have just been in my leg. Following a trip to Europe, I came back and my entire leg was occluded. And what I found out also during this whole journey is that when you get a blood clot, it doesn't always resolve. Your body just finds new pathways to get the blood circulating through you, which is weird. And also one of the reasons that I had such problems when I had the circulation issues. Why the clot was not the main feature. It was my body had no more pathways to make.
How is it making another pathway? Is it like going around the clot, or
Yeah, it'll grow new, not new veins, just, well, yeah, it'll kind of grow new veins around the clot to try to, to continue to circulate the blood. They're not great veins. Like, but it's workable. It's just not ideal. When I had the really, really bad clot, it took almost an entire summer to find a doctor that would even look at me. At that point, I was in my 40s, and they were like, "Well, you've been on this therapy for a long time. This is probably the best it's going to get." Meanwhile, I couldn't walk. So it was a lot of trial and error, and actually had other surgeries trying to see if that was also a problem. And, if maybe it's not the clot, maybe it is something else. And it wasn't. It was the clotting.
does every clot require surgery or just blood
No.
thinners?
No, they'll let it resolve on its own. There are clot busting medications, and for whatever reason, I was never given that option. I'm leaving out the biggest part. Okay, so the year Michael Jackson died, I don't know what year that is. I just know that I was in the hospital with the clot the day I found out that Michael Jackson died. Anyway, a surgeon that I'd never seen before came in and told me that they could put a filter in. It's a filter that goes in through your leg and into your lung to catch the clots. And this is something that's been offered to me before, and I never took them up on it because it just sounds invasive and weird. And what happens to the filter? And I didn't want a piece of foreign plastic in my body. But at that point, I'd been there for 4 days, and my children were very small. So he said, if you do this, we can get you out of here. I'm like, okay. And it was supposed to be a temporary, filter, and I agreed to it, which was a huge mistake. I was able to go home. I was supposed to come back a week later to get it out, and they couldn't get it out. Well, one, they couldn't get it out because there was a clot in it. So it actually worked the way that it was supposed to. So I went back a week after that, and there was no clot, but it was hooked into my vein in a way that they couldn't pull it out. So I dealt with that for about 5 years.
Was that their fault, or is it?
Yes, yes, it was
Jesus.
absolutely their fault. It was a piece of plastic that was kind of rolled up like a straw, that in a way that they can insert it through a vein, and then they pull it open. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
They pull it open like an umbrella. And when they did that, what I found out later was that it was in the wrong place. They put it too low, which is why when they tried to pull it out, it was actually hooked in a weird place on my vein.
Is this sort of like what is it, angioplasty? Like where
Um,
they inflate a kind of balloon?
yeah, it is. It's a similar procedure. It's just a little mesh. It's instead of a balloon, it's like a little mesh upside down umbrella that just kind of comes out and hooks onto your vein and is supposed to just be a filter for anything before things get to your lungs. It was meant to be temporary, so when they were unable to get it out, I immediately, started to panic because I knew that it was just going to break down. It's not meant to be in there forever. So the next 2 or 3 years after that were pretty hard. because I have now this foreign body, and I've felt like I had very little control over my body because I have this thing. And so whenever there was a pain, whenever anything was happening, I attributed it to this thing being in me.
When this was in you, what were the physical limitations? Like, could you walk, or was there you in constant pain?
I could walk. There wasn't anything that was really happening on a daily basis except for intense panic. Um, that was daily. But whenever I would have like any kind of chest pain or anything like that, my immediate thought was, this thing is breaking down, and a piece of this stainless steel hook is going to go through my heart and kill me immediately. That was just all. That was the overriding thought. So, about 3 years after I'd gotten it in, I was on vacation with my family, and we drove. I drove from Dallas to New Orleans, and when I got there, I immediately knew something was wrong. I couldn't walk around. I couldn't do anything, and ended up going to the emergency room that night. And the loveliest surgical resident told me that there was in fact a piece of stainless steel in my aorta from this thing falling apart.
Oh my God.
So nightmare realized. It actually happened. This thing was falling apart and was sticking in my heart. I didn't want to have any kind of surgery there. They did really want to do surgery while I was there, but I didn't want to do that. I don't have any family in New Orleans, and that would have just not been great. So we came home, and we went immediately to Austin Heart, and they did an X-ray and told me that that was false. That there was no steel sticking through it's fine. The it's still intact. So I went home with that as the story. Okay,
How did
so
how did
people.
they have such different diagnoses?
Yeah, that it baffles me too, but I feel like that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear that Oxnard Clinic in New Orleans was wrong. I wanted to hear that, okay, while this thing sucks, it's not, you know, there's no life-threatening thing that's happening to you. So I went with that.
Yeah.
Didn't get any more opinions. I just went with that as fact. And a year later is when my legs started to swell. Went in, and yeah, okay, yes, you do have a piece of steel in your aorta. Sorry, we missed it. At that point, they had already tried 3 times to get it out. And I think try is too strong a word, honestly. I think it was, they went in, tugged on it a little, it's fine, and just left it. So after all of that, I again had to really search around to find someone who would even talk to me.
When they took a look at it, for one thing, are you in under anesthesia?
No, because it was just X-rays. That's all that they were doing.
Okay, so then you actually
Yeah.
know that they didn't do very much.
No,
Okay.
no, they didn't.
Okay.
Finally, got a surgeon to talk to me after a whole summer of not being able to walk. They told me that they could probably take it out, but if they did, my legs weren't going to. That was just my reality now. It's just what it was going to be like. So they it was supposed to be like a 30-minute, and this one I was completely under for. It was supposed to be 30 minutes. It ended up being about 3 hours. They tried. I think they just had to lasso it and drag it out. Finally, it was just not something they could easily get out, which was clear because of everything that had happened up to that point. But yeah, so they got it out. The swelling started to go down, and everything was fine for about 3 years. Um, and then at the time that they did that, they also stented my leg. And then the stent failed about 3 years later. The swelling came back, and I threw another clot, and they had to go in, bust up that clot, and replace the stents. And now I have stents in both legs, and the one in my heart is still okay, holding strong. So yeah, that was what came out of that. And that was about a year ago, and everything has been okay since then.
Was there any other medication other than blood thinners?
No, no, there's just been various different types of blood thinners. There's never been anything else that they've tried. I feel I don't have any data to back this up, but I feel like this is a diagnosis that nobody wants to mess with. Like there's no further study, there's no nothing. There's just you're going to be on blood thinners forever. Get used to it.
How long had you gone previously before things would start to fall apart, or like what was the longest time? Because you said you kept going back and that kind of a thing.
I think the longest in uninterrupted time, or the longest time without a hospitalization or having some kind of surgery, has been maybe a year. Yeah.
So
hmm
how are you feeling? What's your level of optimism?
Um, I'm actually feeling pretty good. You know what it is? I'm That's not true. It's not been a year yet.
Okay.
It's not been a year. This I want to say that was December. Yeah, December, January when I had that surgery. So it's only been, you know, 8 months, almost seven,
Mm,
8 months. So I'm feeling pretty good right now, and that's really what I have to focus on. I know that something is going to happen because it always does. Blood thinners are not. It's not good tech. It's not great. It's meant to be short term. Before you go on to something else, I think the majority of people who take long term therapies like that are heart patients. So that it's supposed to be a transitional thing. It's not supposed to be a lifetime thing.
right. Are doctors saying anything about getting off of them?
It's not possible, because there's no alternative to blood thinners. There's nothing. There are things that I can't eat, without affecting my blood. But there's nothing that I can take either OTC or medication wise that is going to be any different. There are different types of blood thinners, but the ones that where you don't have to continuously go back and check your blood levels make me have clots. They don't know why. It doesn't work. So I'm really relegated to one type of thinner.
And so the stints are just helping what was there already, but as far as the clots, that's just part of this protein deficiency.
Right. Yeah. The stents are just to keep the blood circulating.
Yeah.
Even if I do have a clot, but at this point, my blood is so thin, it's not likely. But chances are never zero. There's something that just that horrible axe holding over my head all the time.
Has there been anything over the years, any medical advances or new information about what you have?
Nothing. No, just new thinners, just new blood thinners. That's all that comes to market. But it's not a widely known condition. So there's just no money behind that. This particular one, and I guess no glory behind it either. It's just it would just be me and a handful of maybe 1,000 people that are affected. So I don't think there's a lot of interest.
God, you would think that clotting would be a universal type thing, that they'd have similar medical procedures or medicines for.
Yeah. No, it's just kind of a holding. We're just gonna wait, wait either for you to spontaneously get better or die. There's nothing behind it at all, really. And I don't think that there are many diseases where blood clotting is the star. I think it's always a side character, you know. So while they're busy treating whatever the cause is, this is one of the symptoms that just kind of falls under the radar.
What is the cause? I mean, do they have any idea other than saying it's hereditary?
No, no. I think that Black people have a blood clotting disorders. This is something else. I think that has something to do with it because whenever I've heard of anyone having any kind of blood clotting disorder, not just a protein C deficiency, it's been a Black person. It's just a disorder that happens, or they have died post surgery or no surgery and just dropped dead one day because they had a blood clot, and that's it. And there just hasn't been a lot of study behind that, so I think that may have something to do with it too.
How do you feel now physically?
Pretty good. I, somehow lucked into a lucked into a job that, hey, I can sit. I can sit and I can talk to people, and I can, be productive and do all of these things and not have to move around a great deal, even though moving around that's a double-edged sword as well, because hey, move around, get your blood circulating. All but also that hurts. I don't want to do that. But generally speaking, I feel pretty good. I think that my legs will always be more sensitive. They're very sensitive to the touch. If I'm ever shorter of a breath, then that causes a little bit of a, not so much a worry, just watchful state.
Uh huh.
So those are just things that I have to watch for. But
So
you know,
does movement and exercise exacerbate it?
it doesn't. It makes it, well. I think any kind of movement exacerbates the pain, the little low lying pain that's always there.
Hmm.
But yeah, exercise is not horrible, but also not super fun because I have jelly legs at this point. All of my bones are kind of soft from 20 years of blood thinners.
Has that ever been prescribed though, like a light aerobic exercise or
No,
some sort of resistance training, or I don't know?
no, nothing like that.
Are they considered detrimental? Like, has doctors said one way or the other? Like, either don't over exercise or use your body, or do, or
No, they've never actually said much about exercise by itself. They say move. Obviously don't spend a whole lot of time in one position. And there are lovely, beautiful, sexy compression hose that I have to wear for a few hours a day. But other than that, that's it. I feel very geriatric most times when I'm in those offices. I'm often the youngest person who's there. I have a whole different type of sickness than most of the people who are there. So I'm treated much like they're treated, but they're, either in their 70s or so I'm prescribed like sit sit and fit, I think, is that lady that just sits in the chair and kind of moves her arms. So there's never a real emphasis on it.
this is something I ask all my guests: is what, if anything, would you consider the benefit of what you have, what you've gone through?
I honestly think that it has caused me to look at life very differently. Like there's not this very circumscribed linear path. It has really, really informed the way that I show up for my clients, because, before, where if I have to kind of envision myself and what kind of therapist I would be without this. And I think that I would be much more cookie cutter about my approach to things that I'm trying to help people through. But this has given me kind of a feeling of immediacy about life. You don't really have a whole lot of time to let other people dictate what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. And I push boundaries so much, just, if you don't like that thing, don't let somebody do that to you. If you want to do that thing, go do that thing. Let's talk about all of the things that you were putting in your way to do that thing. There a lot of that. And also, strangely, when I've gotten people who have tried to go through kind of the medical establishment and have had such adversity and such gaslighting that they think it's them, and it's not them. They may have reached a point of just being upset and angry, and that's how they're seen, and that'll be in their chart. And then when they're trying to just be even and calm about something that they're saying, the person, the nurse, or the doctor will read this in their chart, and they're immediately labeled as a bad person, as someone who's not going to listen no matter what you say, and then they're treated that way. So I've gotten a few clients like that over the years that just need to hear that they're not crazy, and I'm so happy that I can tell them that you're not crazy, because that happens to me, or that has happened to me in the past. You have to keep going back. You have to keep knocking on doors. If you get somebody who's telling you no, they can't help you, that's okay. Go to the next door. And that to me has become very second nature. And when I tell that to someone, the shock and then the light bulb that comes on is amazing. It's incredible, because they now feel like they've gotten the green light to advocate for themselves. And I don't know that I would have been able to do that without, everything that I've been through.
Yeah. Do most of your clients, or do a lot of them, have physical issues, or you just...
I think maybe 10 to 15% of my clients have had some kind of issue physically, but I would say a good half of them have had issues navigating, anything medical. And that's when the boundary work and the communication part really comes into play.
Yeah. I need to interview some medical professionals, because I keep hearing this story from people
Hmm.
about how screwed up the industry is.
Yeah. I
Man.
wonder if you would get like truth from them, or if you interviewed five, if you would somehow get the five where that's never happened. Oh no, I've heard those stories too, but that doesn't happen in my office. Sure, it doesn't happen in your office. Okay.
Yeah, I do have a couple friends who are doctors and nurses. I bet they've got stories. Yeah.
Hmm.
They could corroborate. So, yeah, what else have we missed, or what else would you like to say?
That's about it. I About 5 or 6 years ago, really started noticing how reactive I would be to clients who had some type of medical issue. And that was some work that I had to do myself, right? I would have to take some time to process through that, because every time it would come up, it would put me back in this place of, oh yeah, oh oops, oh me too. Okay, yeah, I may die tomorrow. I don't know.
So it wasn't comforting knowing somebody else was going through something similar?
No,
Uh,
no, because I'd hear a story like, oh, my leukemia is back, or something like that, and my immediate thought was, you should probably go to therapy about that. Oh wait, that's me. Oh, um, so really, really working on that did take some focus for me, and I think that it still rocks me a little bit, takes me off of my axis, but it's a lot quicker now for me to rally and come back and say things that I hope are helpful, hope are comforting to them.
yeah. Do you specifically use your own example? Like, tell people about your story?
It depends on my relationship with the client. I often do, because I'm a relational therapist, so I tend to have people for a long time. And when there's a medical issue, it usually is something that doesn't come up for a while, for whatever reason. Well, they're not coming to me because they have a medical issue, but a medical issue is very much part of their lives. So we'll talk about something else for a year. And then, oh, and by the way, my leukemia is back. Or I had a stroke last week, or, just whatever it is. And so I have to adjust. And if I feel like it is something that's going to be helpful and impactful for them, then yeah, I'll definitely bring it up. Sometimes I don't have to. Sometimes we can just talk about what their experience is. But I've found that when I do bring it up, I'm not talking about it as if I'm reading it from a book. This is something that I've had to do personally, and that seems to be comforting to them.
I don't have any more to add or ask. I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much. I hope that I wasn't rambling too much and some of this is useful.
Oh, I'm sure it will all be. And I
Awesome.
edit out all the rambling anyway, so
Awesome.
we'll both
Yay.
sound like excellent speakers.
Fantastic. That's what I like.
I'd like to thank Patty for talking. Note to self: edit this part. I'd like to thank Patty Evers for sharing her story with us. And if you're interested in more Friends with Deficits, please visit us at friendswithdefecitspodcast.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also check us out on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts for free. And if you want to help support the show and be part of the community that keeps us running, keeps us thriving, and get access to additional material and other sorts of goodies, check out patreon.com/friendswithdeficits, patreon.com/friendswithdeficits. We'd really appreciate it. And once again, I'm Adam Sultan. Keep it flowing.